Hey, Steve Saretsky here. As always, it's the Canadian real estate market update with a particular focus on Vancouver. If you get any sort of value or entertainment out of these videos, all I ask that you hit thumbs up and subscribe. Questions, comments, put those below. Want to discuss again sort of the micro versus the macro bigger picture in real estate. Obviously, from a more micro perspective, the city of Vancouver actually rezoned 99% of all single-family homes earlier this week, basically meaning that moving forward, you can essentially build a duplex on pretty much any lot in the city of Vancouver. So there are obviously many questions, what are the implications of this short-term, long-term, etc. From a micro perspective. Again, looking at this, 99% of single-family homes, so you're basically rezoning it all at once. At a time when single-family home sales in the city of Vancouver from January through to the end of August are at all-time lows. Again, this is historical context. Really couldn't be a worse market currently in the Vancouver detached space, as evidenced by the number of sales. So they've introduced this new policy. I will not kickstart that single-family housing market. There's basically the increased density is simply not enough to attract investors or developers. So generally the developers are shooting for at least a 15% net profit. So in order for them to basically buy, say hypothetically, a single family housing lot on the west side today, it's going to be about $2 million. By the time that you actually go to build on that at roughly about $300 a square foot, again, this is probably more on the conservative side. Then you tack on 15% net profit, realtor fees, property transfer taxes. The end result of that is essentially a half duplex that you'd be selling and another half duplex. You'd basically be selling them at about $1.8 million, and then time that buyer then pays 5% GST for a new home and property transfer taxes. You're basically coming close to $2 million. So as an investor or developer looking at this and having conversations with these guys, there's really not any incentive there for people to start speculating on single family housing deals to then go and duplex and try to sell them, because there's no appetite for a $2 million half duplex on the west side. And on the east side, you're probably looking at 1.3, 1.4 to make that feasible. So I don't see any speculation. I think that it's probably a good play or would make sense financially in a down market when land prices actually fall more, and you have at the bottom of the cycle when prices are about to kick back up. That's probably where it might make sense to speculate on a duplex and rezoning duplex lots. But as it is today, it's just not profitable. The market's clearly trending down. The access to credit isn't there. You're at the end of the cycle, right? You're at the top and you're winding down. So but again, that's a micro play versus a macro. So you're basically asking, is a city of Vancouver rezoning going to impact a global credit cycle, and particularly in Canada, it's a national credit cycle that is very extended. There's a large buildup of household debt. Obviously, you can look at a graph from, say, the G7, which is a house price to income ratio chart. You can see Canada at the very top. You're looking at those and you're saying, well, maybe the city of Vancouver rezones single family homes, and that's somehow going to re-kickstart a real estate cycle, a credit cycle, so to speak, that is actually in the midst of winding down, as you can see with mortgage credit growth at 18-year lows and house price to incomes that is at some point is going to have to be resolved and brought back to more of an equilibrium. So again, that's kind of where you're at. I mean, then you want to pull back some macro factors. Where we stand today is the as higher interest rates continue to inch up, now you have Canadians sitting at the largest debt service ratio since 2000, and I think it's 2008 or 2009. I think it's 2008. You have the largest debt service ratio. Basically, Canadians shelling out money to service their interest on their debt payments. You can imagine how unproductive that is, and how much of a drag on the economy that can be moving forward if more and more of your income is going to service debt payments versus, actually consuming and spending in the economy and creating things with that income. You're actually going to service debt that is very much a drag on the consumer, and that's what we're going to see as housing slows down, as that wealth effect dissipates, and as interest rates creep up, creating larger interest payments. That is going to continue to be a drag on the consumer. Some of the July numbers just came from the Stats Canada, basically noting that household spending, actually, if you look at volume, when you adjust for prices, actually declined by 0.1%. So again, housing spending is the early signs are starting to become more relevant. And then obviously, again, we start to peel back and look at, okay, well, if developers, again, from a micro perspective, aren't looking at rezoning or speculating on duplex homes, what are the implications? And then this is very much was talked about in the United States housing boom, but and it's true really in every boom, any financial boom, is it's generally not that the prices need to fall, it's that they need to stop rising. And that's really never been more true in real estate. You can look at the pre-sale market. You have to think about anyone that maybe is speculating on buying a pre-sale with really maybe no intention to actually live in it, decide to flip it. Their whole mindset behind that is, well, I don't mind paying today's price. It's an inflated price, but as long as I can flip it to another guy at a higher price. But as soon as those prices in the market start to stabilize, heaven forbid even decline, as we're seeing now, all of a sudden it removes your speculative bid. People that are maybe once looking to flip homes, all of a sudden it becomes more challenging to flip in a down market. So that, again, pulls out more buyers as you're simultaneously contracting credit. So you're basically killing off demand as prices level off. And that's starting what we're seeing in the development space as well. Speaking with multiple developers, land acquisition people, that a lot of these development sites are actually starting to come down in price, as essentially the appetite from developers is diminishing to actually go out and buy and acquire land. And then because simply at today's land prices, again, even for these high-rise developments, the projects aren't feasible because the prices, there's just the appetite for $1,500, $1,600 per square foot for a condo at a pre-sale is diminishing, particularly as you remove that foreign bid. So you'll probably start to see housing start to fall off. That is almost imminent. Housing starts will start to decline, and again, that's all part of a natural real estate cycle. So it's not necessarily any reason to panic, but this is just what it is. You just don't have, currently today we still have a record number of housing starts. Again, this is an annualized pace, so you'll start to see that number tick down. It is a bit of a lag effect. But you'll see that, and you have to think about how much of the Vancouver and BC economy is dependent on real estate related activities. It's roughly 24-25% of GDP. Obviously, as soon as you start having a slowdown in housing starts, that is going to impact the construction and trades industry and sector. So those guys will probably have some of their job hours cut back, laid off, etc. And again, that feeds into the overall household spending, etc. And you're tapping on higher debt service interest payments. These things all factor in, they all add into the bigger picture, which is that, again, these are more macro plays, whereas, the micro city of Vancouver is a nice gesture to get some more density, but it simply isn't going to impact things that are already in motion that are much greater and much more out of control than what the city of Vancouver can do. It's interesting. I was at a city of Vancouver mayor's convention. All the candidates were up there basically talking about their housing platforms, which obviously a lot of it is sort of smoke and it, blowing hot smoke. But at the end of the day, is these guys have so very little control over what actually happens. A mayor of Vancouver has almost no impact on a credit cycle or a like a macro housing market. They can make little tweaks to how much they can build and this and that, but it's so minuscule. Really, it actually stems more from the top, from the federal government, about how many mortgages they actually want to securitize and insure to keep the banks lending. That's the real stuff that you have to be watching for, and there's obviously been a diminishing appetite for that with the CMHC really slowing down the amount of mortgages that they're willing to insure, etc. So that's pretty much it. These are the things that we keep an eye on. It's not necessarily that house prices have to fall. It's not necessarily that interest rates have to go up to begin to start creating issues that feed into the bigger picture with pulling out speculative bids, etc., slowing down of housing construction, which becomes drag on the economy. Looking at, again, things to keep an eye on is the Canadian CPI. It was 2.8% year over year in August, so it was slightly down from the 3% in July. But that 2.8% again is running a little bit hotter than probably the Bank of Canada would like. I would almost certainly expect that, it's pretty much priced in a Bank of Canada rate hike near the end of October. As I've talked about before, I said that they would hold off in September. It seems almost consensus that they're going to go ahead in October, so that'll be another interest rate hike, again, on top of a 10-year high in debt service payments. So that's, again, where we're at today. As always, use this information to make your best decision. I think one other thing that I found interesting is starting to see my thesis on Toronto, for me anyways, again, opinion continues to confirm itself. The Toronto market, in my opinion, is no questionably lagging Vancouver. Again, this is people say, well, how can you say this and that and this and that, and the Toronto's clearly recovering? It's like, well, no, again, Toronto is not exempt from this global credit cycle that is slowing down across the world in these global cities such as Vancouver and Toronto, which were heavily impacted by larger inflows of capital from China, etc., which was also propped up from a local credit boom. Toronto is exhibiting many signs and behaviors that Vancouver was last year in 2017. Again, this is from a Toronto housing bull. So I know when he starts to become a little bit more pessimistic and a little bit more bearish, that all of a sudden I really need to start paying attention. Big Remax guy in Toronto. It's been flogging condos for 30 years. Basically telling me that downtown Toronto condo prices haven't moved in 4 or 5 months. There's been zero price growth. That the largest price increases actually came for one bedrooms out in the suburbs in these condos. That again exhibits a lot of behavior that Vancouver did, with a huge blow off top in suburban 1-bedroom condos and 2-bedroom condos last year in 2017, increased by 40% on an annual basis. And of course are correcting arguably the hardest right now. So those suburban condos exploded as Vancouver condo price increases started to decelerate. So yeah, I think that again, people are way too focused on micro movements in housing markets, and again, not understanding sort of the precarious situation that the Canadian economy as a whole is in. What a city council might do to zoning is somehow going to impact what a central bank is doing with their balance sheet, and interbank lending in Canada, those rates moving higher, suggesting that, again, credit is continuing to tighten. These are the things that make markets and capital, more importantly, flow. So that's kind of where we're at today, which, again, if you're watching this video, is open to interpretation. Obviously, I have a differing view or opinion than perhaps the BC Real Estate Association's chief economist, who released a video, I believe it was last week, stating that there are all the signs of the mortgage stress test are now in the rear view and that prices will rise into 2019. I don't see any data that shows me or confirms that. That I'm not sure. Again, BC home sales declined 26% in August on a year-over-year basis. The trend line on a 12-month rolling average for home sales in BC does not look good, and I just don't see how dropping sales and rising inventory is a bullish indicator for prices to rise. But again, that is open for interpretation, obviously, and perhaps a difference of opinions. That's where we're at today. I believe it was the Royal LePage CEO who also noted that Canada has had a magical, this is quote for quote, magical soft landing. Those words, wow, magical soft landing. So again, but that, opinions. Hope that helped. Otherwise, see you next week.